three things we pray. To help to see you more clearly, to love you more dearly, to follow you more nearly, day by day. Amen. Please be seated. The good news for us this morning, Jesus is offering us an invitation, but there's a catch. And the catch is that the invitation is in the form of a parable. So it's kind of like receiving an invitation in the mail and you open it up and you realize it's a card to something, but it's in a riddle. And so you may be intrigued, you may be interested, you may be confused, you think it's probably to a birthday party, you're not really sure, but you're drawn in to explore some more. That is what the parables do. Now, sometimes they're exciting for people. Anybody here find the parables, you like the parables? They're kind of exciting? You enjoy them? Yeah, okay. Anybody here find the parables sometimes confusing, hard to understand? Now, you notice it's a lot of the same hands went up. It's possible to enjoy the parables and yet still find them hard to understand. And that is on purpose. Because part of the idea of the parables is it's supposed to draw you in and to cause you to wrestle with it a little bit. It's supposed to force you to delve a little bit deeper. You know, Jesus could just make a simple pronouncement, be a better person. But he doesn't. Jesus wants to instead encourage you to delve into the parable, to explore it, to study it, to wrestle with it, and get more out of it as a result. And that's why the parables are always operating on multiple levels at the same time. Now we're lucky. In the Gospel of Mark, for example, when Jesus will offer the parables and the disciples struggle and don't understand, Mark is far more likely to just say, oh, what have they given me, and just move on. Right? But Jesus, in the Gospel of Matthew, the consummate teacher, he sits down with his disciples and he explains the gospel a little bit more for them. He helps them to understand, well, here's a way that you can understand it, thereby inviting them into the story and having them wrestle with it a little bit more. And I think that should be our approach, to be invited into the story of the parable and to see where we find ourselves in the story. I think that's a good process for all the parables, actually. For a good example, the parable of the prodigal son. A great way to understand the parable is to see where you find yourself in that story. You place yourself in the shoes of being the father. And wonder what it's like in your own life to have felt like you've lost something forever and it's gone, just to discover that you have it back again. You can place yourself in the shoes of the brother in that story, the one who has done everything right, has toed the line his whole life, and doesn't feel like he's loved anymore because of it. You can also put yourself in the shoes of being the prodigal son himself, wondering what it's like in your own life to have tried and to have failed, and to be broken and in need of forgiveness, in need of redemption. So all of these things are happening at the very same time in this parable, and it draws you in and teaches you a greater lesson than you could learn otherwise. And the same is true for our parable for today, the parable of the sower. This is a story where Jesus has gathered his disciples around and is teaching them about the gospel. Teaching them about the role the gospel plays in their own life and how they take that gospel and live out in the world with it. And he invites them in to explore the different layers. So let's do that. Let's explore that. I think the first layer for us is seeing ourselves in the place of being the soil in this story. What if we're the soil? And the seed of the gospel is being planted within us. The seed of the gospel that Jesus is offering the world of life and love and grace. And it's being offered to be planted within us and causes us to look within our own lives at what the quality of our soil is. See, if we're hard of heart, if we're closed-minded, that literally is like the soil being hard and closed, and the seed of the gospel can't be planted in it. Can't take root. And so we need to look at how the soil is tilled and tended in our life so that we can be open of heart, open of mind, so that the gospel can be planted in and take root. Maybe let's look at how deep our soil is. Part of why we come to the church is to study and to grow and to learn and to become deeper Christians. That's why we study the Bible. That's why we gather in fellowship. Because if our soil isn't deep enough, the gospel can be planted in. But then the winds blow and the scorching sun comes in. Other things come up in life and the gospel has no chance to thrive. It needs to be rooted deeply within us. And so that's part of what we come to do in the church, is to till our soil and to make sure that it's deep and rich and nutritious, so that the seed of the gospel can be planted within us. Now, what about another level? What if instead we're the seed? What if we're the seed of the gospel in this story? Jesus tells us that we're made in the image of God, we're the beloved children of God, that we've been given this grace, this everlasting life that has been promised. So we are that seed of the gospel being planted in the world. And if that's the case, we need to look around at the world around us and see where we're being planted. Are you being planted in a rich place where you can grow and you can thrive? Again, we work at doing that in the church. We work at making sure you're surrounded. Look to your left and your right to see friends and neighbors who can uplift you and help you thrive. That's like getting the nutrients we need as these little seeds, the water that we need, the sunlight that we need in our lives to be able to grow into the mature, abundant plants that we have the potential to be. But we also, I'm sure all of us, you either know or you will know what it's like to believe in something and be passionate about it, just to have people around you tear it down because they don't believe in it. Right? We go out into the world and we're asked to do a radical thing, to love unconditionally, to go and be forgiving and generous with people we don't need to be generous with. And there will be people around us who will be like those thorns, those weeds in the story, who will rise up and try to choke us out. And so we need to be able to ask ourselves, where are the weeds in our lives? Where is the nutrient? Where is the sunlight? Where is the water in our lives? And we can explore that here together. Now the last level, one more level yet in this parable. One more level yet is, what if we're the sowers? What if we're the sower of the seed in this story? And Jesus talks about the sower as she goes out and she scatters these seeds abundantly, everywhere. Notice one of the important things in this lesson is that the sower doesn't pick and choose where the seeds get planted. The sower just goes and spreads the seeds abundantly. The seeds of the gospel that we've been given, this abundance of life and love and grace, is something that we have an inexhaustible supply that's been given to us to just share everywhere. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I've been guilty in my own life of looking at a patch of ground and thinking, nothing's going to grow there. The gospel's not going to grow there, and I don't try. And that's on me, because it's not my job to decide where to spread the gospel. It's not our job to do that. It's our job to be the sower and just share it. And we're going to leave it up to God to handle the rest. Has anybody here ever seen a plant grow somewhere where it has no business growing? Right? You've looked and you've seen a little plant growing in a crack in the cement sidewalk, and the sun is beating down on it, and it has no business living there, and yet it does. We are not called to decide where the gospel is worth being spread. We're called to just sow it abundantly and let God's will be done, because it will grow up in places where we will be surprised, where we didn't expect it to grow. So yes, we are being invited into a complex, beautiful parable here, where we're being asked to look at our own lives at multiple levels at the same time, to look at how our lives are being tilled and prepared for the seed of the gospel to be planted within us. And at the same time being asked to look at where are the weeds in our lives? Where are the weeds in our lives, and where are the nutrients? Where's the sunlight? And lastly, where are we being the sowers? Going out into the world and sharing this gospel, the gospel of life and love and grace for others, as abundantly as we can. So let us RSVP yes to this invitation into this complex and beautiful parable.